Hello everyone, welcome to the second part in the series of acting emotion. In this video, we are going to talk about consent. I'm going to explain it to you in two separate contexts. First, in personal life and relationships, and secondly, in professional life, in acting. So, let's start with what consent is. I like to describe consent as allowing someone or something sometimes into our boundaries, which means we first need to know about boundaries. And how are we going to know about that? Well, did I say that this is part 2? Part 1 is about boundaries and it is in the explanation. Go click it and come back. I'll wait here, I promise. Okay, let's start about consent in personal relationships. So again, the question, what is consent? Well, I have a good answer for you, my friends. Consent is fries. Because we all know consent is delicious and sexy, just like fries. It also stands for the 5 qualities of consent to really count as consent. Consent must be freely given, it's retractable, it's informed, it's enthusiastic, and it's specific. Let's start with the most important one, at least in my opinion, freely given. Consent in any context is valid only if it is freely given, willingly, out of your own accord, for any act. If you are pressured, if you are worried about losing your job, if you are worried about upsetting someone, if you're worried about consequences of something, that's not consent. That's being forced into something. It doesn't count as consent. Consent must be something that you agree, that comes from within you. Of course, there can always be some gray areas. Consent to keep your partner happy, I would say no, it's not freely given, but things can get complicated. Another option, and I'm not going to answer it here because I don't have the answers, think about sex work. Can a sex worker's consent be considered consent? It's transactional. Assuming they are not being forced into this life and they can choose their clients, you can say they agree to this, but you can also argue, well, they wouldn't probably agree to this if they had any other means of making money. So it's something to think about, that consent must be freely given. The second important part is a freely given consent is also retractable. You can always change your mind. You can agree to do something, but then you discover a new boundary that you didn't remember or didn't know it is there. You can change your mind. Something felt like a good idea and it doesn't feel like that anymore. You can retract your consent. You can always change your mind. If you're not allowed to change your mind, that's not consent. Again, things are a bit different in business. In business, you sign a contract and that's a bit of a, then changing your mind has consequences, but for personal relationships, changing your mind should not have heavy consequences. Yeah, someone might be disappointed, but I wouldn't count that as a consequence. Third one, consent is informed. This is simple yet heavy. You need to know what you're consenting to. You need to understand what you're consenting to. This is basically why minors, underage people cannot consent to sexual relationships. All implications must be known, the person must understand exactly what they're consenting to. This is also, when you visit a website and they have this cookie and private data policies, you need to know what you are agreeing to before you click I accept. You all do, right? You should. Next, enthusiasm. a consent must be enthusiastic. It doesn't always have to be, yeah! But it's still, this principle is called fuck yeah or no. Because, well, imagine you want to do something with your partner, you want to get close, and they're just, whatever. That's not exactly consent. It doesn't have to be like extremely like explosion of emotion, but they need to be into it. Otherwise, this is another principle I like to repeat. An unenthusiastic yes is a no. Someone isn't so sure, yeah or yeah, that's better be considered a no. Not everyone agrees with me, and not everyone has to, but this is a principle I have. Finally, consent is specific. I give my consent, I agree to, or I want to do this at the agreed time, at this agreed place, with this agreed person. It does not imply that I want to do the same thing in the future. I want to do it the same thing with another person, or at another place, or at another context. Just like I like to display affection with someone in my privacy, does not mean I like acting the same way in public. Basic stuff. Well, that brings us how to communicate consent. I would say, if you are not sure, ask. Just ask. How to ask? With your words. Yeah, but it's kind of awkward, breaks the mood. No, ask. Well, you don't always have to ask. Yeah, you can know this person and have these things, or asking with words can feel awkward. Sure, there are multiple ways of asking. Imagine how you shake hands when you agree with someone. You don't grab anyone's hand. This is called 90-10 principle. You go 90% of the way you want to go and leave the next 10% to the other person. So I offer my hand and the other person takes it and we shake hands. This is not everyone does, but I also recommend when you meet someone close to you, family member or close friend, and you like hugging them, and unless you are sure that person likes being hugged, it's nice to approach them with your arms open and let them finish the act. It's nice that way. Or if you are flirting with someone and you want to kiss them, but you don't know if anyone, like, not sure, or you are sure but you don't know that the other person wants to return your affection, you can always use your body language slowly. The whole point is you can approach them and you can wait for them to finish this. Why? The whole idea here is to give the other person the chance to say yes or no. Let them consider things and make an informed decision to go yes or go towards no. Because, and this is the motto of this video, yes is meaningless unless no is an option, or yes is only meaningful in the presence of no as an option. If the other person can't say no, then they can't say yes either. Alright, let's get to professional life. Professional life is a bit different. In professional life, phrase isn't that accurate, so some people thought a lot about this. And for actors at least, say, we can't say phrase, so let's say consent is crisp. In this case, everything I said about being informed and being specific are still valid. You need to know exactly what you're consenting to, and your consent is case by case. It's specific. Being retractable is also the same, but as I said, well, business world, capitalism is not humane. when you agree to something, sometimes it's difficult to take it back. In acting worlds, you sign on a project and then there's a scene that you agreed to play, but then you don't want to do it anymore. Yeah, things can start getting tricky, but I'll come to that in a sec. But retraction still has a deadline. Assume you shot a scene and then it got included in the film and it got released. Well, you can no longer undo that. So at least whatever you do has an expiration deadline. After a while, you cannot retract it. Or when you sign a business contract, it's often taking it back has consequences. So yes, consent is retractable with an asterisk. Well, in business, freely given consent is never 100% possible. Especially if you are a professional actor, not agreeing to things will always cost you something. So consent can never be freely given in the professional world. Instead, we like to say in professional world, consent must be considered. So you consider ups and downs. What are you going to get about it? What are you going to lose? What's the cost? What's the benefit? And then you are allowed to think for yourself and make your best decision. It's similar to freely given, but freely given means there is no power imbalance involved here. There's always a power imbalance, so we need to acknowledge that. Enthusiasm, on the other hand, is not relevant for business. We don't care if you really want to do something as long as you agree to it. So we don't care about enthusiasm, we drop that. But we introduce a new concept. P stands for participatory. What does this mean? This means if you need to give consent to something, you need to take part in the discussion of it. You need to get an input, a say in it. What does this mean? Well, let's give an example. Maybe a film you play in needs you to appear nude in it and you're not really comfortable in it. You should be able to discuss this with your producer and director and maybe come to a compromise where you are okay with appearing nude only from the back. And then a lot of film studios have, or theaters have, special accessories that you wear at your front so that you can cover your front while appearing nude on the back of your camera, or you can appear partial nude. You can have if you're playing a comedy, you can have the director strategically put an object in front of the camera so that your head and arms are only visible and it can only imply you are nude, and so on. So you can discuss these kind of things. But it's important to take the input of the person who's being asked to give consent. Why don't we list this in personal relationships? Because, I mean, personal relationships are participatory without saying. If you're not participating in a relationship, is it really your relationship? So we don't really have to say that. An excellent example I love giving about considered and participatory consent is from the film Starship Troopers. I love that film. It's from 1997. If you haven't seen it, go see it. This is not a spoiler, so you can keep watching, no problem. That film has an infamous scene where all the major actors are in the same room taking shower together, and they are just casually chatting each other, or this male female mixed bunch of people are having shower together and talking to each other. It shows, it's a military themed film, and it shows to me the camaraderie between the soldiers. I think it's a brilliant scene. I'm glad it exists. Some people are glad it exists for other reasons, but I'm not going there. It's out of scope. So what happens? In that film, the actors were asked to shot that scene all nude in a shower, and most of them were not comfortable with that, so they discussed it. The compromise they reached was that all the crew, camera people, light people, technicians, so on, they would all leave the studio. The only person who was allowed in together with the actor was the director himself, Paul Verhoeven. Interesting guy, check out his films. So he would shoot the film, shoot the scene only by himself. Plus, he would also strip naked together with the actors to be on the same level as them. And that actually made the actors feel more comfortable with the idea, and they finally agreed to shoot the scene. That's really great, in my opinion. Consent doesn't have to be only in intimate scenes. It doesn't only imply sexuality, it implies all kinds of everything that includes touch or any kind of contact. In the next video I'll get more into this. It's going to be called acting intimacy. But I would like to tell you also, consent is important when we play stage combat. It's something we do a lot in our improvisation. And the first thing I teach my actors is that, unlike real life, where when you attack someone you are actually taking away, you are forcing the consent, you are actually giving consent to them. When I try to punch someone on stage, they know they're allowed to take the punch. They're going to allow to grab my arm and twist it, very gently of course, or they know they're allowed to dodge it. Anyway, this is all I've got to say on this topic. I'm planning to have a short video about a couple of exercises I have with my actors, plus a part 3 in this series. So see you in the next video, and remember, yes is meaningless unless no is an option. Bye.